Case of Sherri Papini. Keith and Sherri Papini first met in middle school, when Keith was in 7th grade and Sherri was in 8th. They shared their first kiss with each other. Their friendship flourished quickly and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, as they grew older, they drifted apart and went their separate ways. Years later, Sherri married another man in 2006, but the marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherri found herself single again. Then, by chance, she ran into Keith, and the spark between them was immediately rekindled. The time they had spent apart had given them both personal growth and maturity, and they realized how much they had missed each other. Keith and Sherri decided to give their love a second chance, and they started dating. As they spent more time together, their connection grew stronger every day. Within a year of reuniting, they knew they were meant to be together. They got married in 2009 and had 2 children, settling down in Redding, California. Sherri used to work in telecommunications, but after having children, she became a stay-at-home mom. Keith continued to work at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. The Papini family seemed to have a perfect life from the outside. However, on November 2nd, 2016, Keith's world was turned upside down when he came home to find his wife, Sherri, missing. It was unusual for her not to be there, as she was always home when he returned from work. At first, Keith thought she might have gone for a walk, but as time passed and she didn't come back, he grew increasingly worried. Keith called the daycare center their children attended to see if Sherri had picked them up, but the school secretary told him she hadn't. This heightened Keith's concern, and he decided to use the Find My iPhone app on his phone to track her location. The app showed that her phone was at the end of their driveway. Alarmed, Keith rushed outside to search the area and found Sherri's phone lying on the ground, with her headphones nearby. When Keith found Sherri's phone and headphones at the end of the driveway, he made a disturbing discovery. There were strands of hair entangled in the headphones. He immediately contacted the authorities at the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, who took Sherri's disappearance seriously and brought in the FBI right from the start. Keith was desperate to find Sherri and get her back safely. To do this, he knew it was crucial to get her name and face out to the public. So he spoke to the media, hoping to generate support and assistance in finding her. The media played a huge role in spreading the story of Sherri's disappearance, and her beauty, blonde hair and blue eyes made her case especially captivating to the public. As a result, news channels eagerly covered every detail of the story. After Sherri went missing and it became public, the police received many tips, but none of them led to finding her. As they continued to investigate, they looked at Sherri's phone for clues. They found a heated text conversation between Sherri and her husband Keith from a few months earlier, which made the police suspicious of Keith's possible involvement. Despite this, Keith was cooperative and offered to take a lie detector test to clear his name. He passed the test. In addition to the argument with Keith, the police found texts on Sherri's phone from men using fake female names. It seemed like Sherri was planning to leave Keith. On November 10th, 2016, the police tracked down one of these men and questioned him about Sherri's disappearance. The man claimed to have met Sherri 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work conference she was attending. Although he said he didn't know her current whereabouts, he shared some information about her relationship with her husband, Keith. According to the man, Sherri did not respect Keith and was even fearful of him. He alleged that Keith was violent and abusive, often locking Sherri up in their home. After a tip from a man who knew Sherri, claiming that her husband Keith was abusive, the police launched an investigation. However, after speaking with friends and neighbors, they found no evidence to support the claims of Keith's violence. Several days into Sherri's disappearance, on November 24, 2016, the police received a call at 4:32 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. The caller reported a woman in distress on the side of I-5. The police rushed to the scene and found a woman bound with chains and zip ties. It took a moment for the officers to realize Sherri Papini, who had been missing for days. Relieved to find her alive, they carefully freed her from the restraints and took her to the hospital for medical attention. When Sherri arrived at the hospital, it was clear that she had been through a traumatic experience. Her body was covered in bruises, Her hair was noticeably shorter, and she had a burn mark on her arm as well as a bad rash. She had also lost a significant amount of weight, weighing in only 87 pounds. While Sherri was recovering at Woodland Memorial Hospital, the police tried to interview her, but she was too emotional to provide any information. The only condition under which she would cooperate was if her husband Keith was present in the room. With Keith by her side, Sherri recounted the terrifying incident. She said she was out jogging when a dark-colored SUV driven by two women approached her. She got out of the vehicle, pointed a gun at her, while Sherri Papini stayed in the car. Sherri was forced into the back of the SUV against her will. Before getting into the vehicle, Sherri had the presence of mind. Leave behind her phone and headphones on the driveway, along with some strands of her hair. She did this intentionally, hoping that Keith would find them and realize something was wrong. Sherri shared the details of her abduction with the police and her husband Keith. During the journey, she kept dozing off in the back of the SUV, making it difficult for her to keep track of time. The two women had wrapped something around her face, preventing her from seeing her surroundings. They told her that she was being kidnapped because a man wanted to buy her and she was being taken to meet him. However, they refused to reveal the man's identity or location. Sherri was terrified and worried about her fate, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. She also claimed to have been physically abused by one of the women who frequently hit her, leaving her with multiple injuries. Sherri claimed that her captors branded her right shoulder with the word Exodus to attract a buyer, who was allegedly a police officer. She also said that her captors constantly played mariachi music, which she found disorienting and unsettling. This music added to the oppressive atmosphere of her captivity, making her feel more isolated. Sherri was held in a single room with a boarded-up window. She was chained in a closet that served as a bathroom with a bucket for sanitation purposes. About 3 weeks into her captivity, Sherri heard a gunshot. After that, she had been with her disappeared, leaving Sherri to wonder if she had been killed. Sherri Papini, who had been quiet until now, took control of the situation. She instructed Sherri to get into a car, and they drove along I-5. Without warning, the car stopped, leaving Sherri startled and disoriented. She looked around, trying to understand what was happening. The younger woman then told Sherri to get out of the car. Confused and unsure, Sherri cautiously did as she was told. As Sherri exited the car, she felt a mix of fear and excitement. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into an even more dangerous situation? She was left with more questions than answers, feeling uncertain and scared. After being found safe on the side of I-5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce Sherri's return. During the conference, the police reported that Sherri had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women, which sparked widespread concern among the public. However, this news brought unintended consequences. Following the press conference, a wave of racism erupted, targeting individuals of Spanish descent. The reporting of Sherri's abduction had fueled public fear and anxiety, leading some to unfairly blame individuals associated with the Hispanic community. After being abducted, Sherri returned home and began attending therapy sessions to cope with her trauma. As a California resident, she was eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses public funds to help pay for victims' therapy. In the aftermath, she became withdrawn, spending more time at home and avoiding social outings. 1 year into the investigation, police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women believed to be involved in the crime. Despite this development, no new leads emerged. The police also revealed that they had found male DNA on Sherri's underwear, which did not match her husband Keith's DNA. 2 years passed with no matches on the male DNA, and the case remained unsolved. However, in 2020, a long-awaited breakthrough finally occurred. The police working on Sherri's case decided to try a new approach to find the owner of the unknown DNA. They used a technique called familial DNA, which compares the DNA profile to potential relatives of the donor. This method is commonly used in criminal investigations to analyze DNA evidence and identify possible family members of a suspect. By looking at specific genetic traits shared among family members, investigators can create a shorter list of potential suspects and explore possible family connections. In the Sherri Papini case, the police were surprised to discover that the DNA found in her underwear matched a close relative of James Reyes, her ex-boyfriend. This new information raised many questions and became a crucial moment in the investigation. The police suspected Sherri's ex-boyfriend, James Reyes, of being involved in her abduction. To investigate, they collected a soda bottle from his trash in June 2020 and sent it to a forensic lab for DNA testing. A month later, the lab results showed a match between James' DNA and the DNA found on Sherri's underwear the day she was discovered. With this new evidence, the police went to James' home in Costa Mesa, California, where he worked at a sports shop to ask him about Sherri's case. James told the police that he had dated Sherri about 10 years prior, and the last time he saw her was a year after they broke up. He claimed to have only heard about her disappearance and safe return through rumors. During the police interview, James initially denied any involvement in Sherri's kidnapping. However, as the conversation progressed, he revealed that he was still close friends with Sherri despite their breakup 10 years prior. Although James admitted to playing a role in her disappearance, he claimed he didn't nab her. Instead, he insisted he was merely assisting a friend in need. James reported to the police that Sherri reached out to him for help, claiming she needed to escape her abusive husband, Keith. On November 2, 2016, James told police that a friend had lent him a car, which he used the next day to pick up Sherri. According to James, Sherri hid in the back seat of the car, lying down during the drive to Costa Mesa. During her stay at James' house, Sherri mostly stayed in her room, only coming out to help with chores like cleaning and cooking. She even boarded up the bedroom window, as she wanted to feel secure with the door closed. James noticed that Sherri was intentionally trying to lose weight by barely eating. Sherri asked James to help her harm herself, including hitting herself to create bruises. James was uncomfortable with this request, but he still agreed to help her, even going so far as to shoot a hockey puck off her knee at her request. Despite his reservations, James participated in these harmful activities with Sherri. James confessed to branding Sherri with the word Exodus on her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool they had bought from Hobby Lobby. Before Sherri left his house, she asked James to get chains and zip ties, which he used to bind her securely, before driving her to Reading, California. During the drive, Sherri told James to stop the car, which he did, and she escaped. When questioned by the police, James denied knowing anything about the two Hispanic women Sherri claimed had abducted her. However, when the police searched James' house, they were shocked to find that several rooms matched the descriptions Sherri had given of the place where she was held captive. Specifically, James' bedroom and closet exactly matched a drawing Sherri had made for the police, detailing the layout of the rooms she had been confined to. The police discovered a striking similarity between a table at James' house and the one Sherri described in her initial interviews. They decided to bring Sherri and Keith in for another interview at the police station. The police had accumulated substantial evidence led them to believe Sherri had faked her own abduction. They intended to confront her with their findings during the interview. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherri if she wanted Keith to leave the room. Sherri remained silent. The police then decided to leave the couple alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherri approached Keith and confessed that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who had supposedly abducted her. She felt indebted to this woman for sparing her life. Sherri refused to press charges against the woman who attacked her. Keith listened to her reasons, but he was skeptical and worried. Sherri's explanation didn't make sense to him, and he was starting to get scared. He pointed out that even if Sherri didn't want to press charges, the attacker would still face consequences for her actions. The police re-entered the interview room with an update. They had found a familial DNA match for the male DNA on Sherri's clothing, and it led them to James Reyes, Sherri's ex-boyfriend. When Keith heard the name, he had a visceral reaction. He knew James as Sherri's ex. The police told Sherri and Keith that James Reyes, Sherri's ex-boyfriend, had passed a lie detector test. They suspected that Sherri had faked her own kidnapping and claimed to have evidence to support James' version of events. The police told Sherri that they believed her significant weight loss during her disappearance was intentional, as she had chosen to eat very little. They also suggested that the rash on her arm was caused by the cleaning products she had used at James' house. Furthermore, the police alleged that James had used a wooden tool bought from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherri. They also claimed that Sherri's broken nose was self-inflicted, caused by hitting herself with a hockey stick. Despite the mounting evidence against her, Sherri remained calm and pretended not to understand what the police were talking about. Sherri Papini claimed to have not seen her ex-boyfriend James in years, stating she last saw him at his brother's funeral in Southern California. However, the police knew she was lying, because James had provided them with information about her disappearance that only someone close to her would know. On March 3, 2022, the FBI arrested Sherri on charges of lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to a plea deal, admitting to orchestrating her kidnapping. Sherri's lawyers requested a sentence of 1 month in prison, followed by 7 months of house arrest. However, prosecution recommended an 18-month sentence. In September 2022, the judge sentenced Sherri to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine. The judge doubted that Sherri would ever be able to pay the fine, saying it would take winning the lottery. During the sentencing, the judge called Sherri a manipulator and habitual liar, stating that he had no doubt she would have continued lying if she hadn't been caught. The judge told Sherri that she needed to be punished to stop others from committing similar crimes. Sherri had taken advantage of many resources, including money meant for victims, Social Security disability payments, and a GoFundMe account set up after her fake kidnapping. The judge wanted to deter others from committing similar crimes by punishing Sherri. She spoke at her sentencing hearing, expressing regret and apologizing to those who had suffered because of her actions. Sherri acknowledged her guilt, saying she was responsible for lying and bringing shame to herself and those around her. In August 2023, Sherri was released from prison and moved to a halfway house. Sherri and her husband Keith separated on the day of her arrest in March 2022. After Sherri pleaded guilty, Keith filed for divorce the next month and sought full custody of their children. Let's go back to the beginning, when Catherine Moroney was only 13 years old and fell in love with a 21-year-old man named Michael Moroney. Michael had traveled all the way from Ireland with hopes of building a better life in America. Despite the significant age gap, their bond grew strong, and in 1923 they decided to get married. The couple built a modest life together, living on the second floor above a busy grocery store at 5200 Wentworth Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. Michael was known as a hardworking man who was determined to provide a better future for his family. When Catherine turned 17 on May 9, 1928, she gave birth to a baby girl with striking light blue eyes. They named her Mary Agnes Moron. A year later, in 1929, the family grew again with the birth of their second daughter, Anastasia Moroney. Soon after, in 1930, Catherine discovered she was expecting once more, eagerly waiting to welcome their third child into the family. The Moroney family, who had Irish roots, struggled with serious financial hardship during that time. Their difficulties came during the Great Depression, a devastating economic crisis that began in the United States and eventually spread across the world. Many families and businesses suffered, and the Moroneys were no exception. Michael lost his job and was forced to earn just $15 a week distributing handbills, an amount that was far from enough to support a family of 4. Desperate to find stable work and some form of assistance, Michael placed an advertisement in the Chicago Daily Tribune. He hoped that someone might offer him a job or provide help so he could care for his family during those difficult times. In those days, newspapers often included special sections where individuals and families could request support from generous citizens, charitable groups, or organizations. The Moroney family submitted their appeal to the newspaper and waited hopefully for a response. However, 3 long weeks passed, and no help had arrived. Then, on Wednesday, May 13, 1930, just days after little Mary Agnes' second birthday, a man named Edgar Gilpin came across their advertisement and decided to respond. Edgar, who worked as a male nurse and was known for his philanthropic efforts, felt compelled to help the struggling Moroney family. He offered Michael practical support by giving him a suit and a pair of shoes, hoping it would help him secure a better job. The Moron family was incredibly thankful for this small yet meaningful act of kindness. They accepted the assistance through the agency, which meant their address became accessible to others seeking help. Unfortunately, their address eventually reached a mysterious woman, setting the stage for unexpected and troubling events. On May 14, 1930, Catherine was at home with her daughters, Mary Agnes and Anastasia, preparing to clean the house. While she was scrubbing the floor, she suddenly heard a knock at the door and went to answer it. To her surprise, a young and elegantly dressed woman with beautiful blonde hair was standing outside. The woman was wearing a stylish gray suit with blue trimmings, and her hat was decorated with delicate gray lace. Catherine also noticed the striking pearly necklace around her neck and the jewel-studded watch on her wrist. It was the first time Catherine had ever seen this woman. She introduced herself by saying that a social worker named Mrs. Henderson had sent her to assist the family with their situation. Catherine had never heard of Mrs. Henderson before, but she assumed the visit might be connected to the advertisement they had placed in the newspaper asking for help. Believing the woman had come to offer support, Catherine welcomed her inside and invited her to sit down and talk. The woman arrived with several groceries for the Moron family, including fresh vegetables she had purchased from the grocery store just down the street from their home. She praised Catherine for how well she was keeping the house clean and complimented her hardworking and ambitious nature. Grateful for the kindness, Catherine invited the woman to sit down, and the two spent quite some time talking together. Catherine opened up to the woman about the many struggles her family had been facing. The woman listened attentively, appearing friendly and genuinely interested in helping. For the first time in a while, Catherine felt a sense of relief and comfort, believing that someone had finally come forward to support her family. The woman's gentle tone and sweet manner made her seem trustworthy and kind. She appeared intelligent and well-educated. As their conversation continued, the woman noticed little Mary Agnes playing on the floor, and her face instantly lit up with delight. It was obvious that she found the child incredibly sweet and charming. Although both of Catherine's daughters, Mary Agnes and Anastasia, were present in the house, the woman seemed to focus all of her attention on Mary Agnes. During their discussion, she also revealed that she had tragically lost her own daughter the previous year. Catherine felt a deep sense of sympathy for the woman after hearing about the loss of her daughter. However, the conversation soon took an unexpected turn. The woman made a rather unusual request. She asked if she could take little Mary Agnes with her to California for a short while. She tried to reassure Catherine by saying that when Mary Agnes returned, she would look much healthier and as chubby as a little butterball. Catherine immediately felt uncertain. The woman was a complete stranger, and California was a very long way from home, making the request seem both surprising and unsettling. Catherine ultimately decided that she could not allow her young daughter to leave with a complete stranger. However, before leaving, the woman handed Catherine a $2 note and promised that she would return the following day. Although Catherine remained confused and uncertain, there was something about the woman's confident manner and presence that she found strangely persuasive. Eventually, Catherine relented and agreed to let Mary Agnes go with the woman. Before departing, she asked for the woman's name. After a brief pause, the woman replied, "My name is Julia Otis." When Michael returned home from work, Catherine eagerly recounted the visit from Julia Otis. But his excitement quickly turned to alarm when he noticed that Mary Agnes was missing. He asked Catherine where their little daughter was, and she explained that she had let Mary Agnes go with Julia Otis to California. Michael grew worried for their daughter, but they chose to wait and hope that Mary Agnes would be returned the next day. That evening, the Moron family shared a hearty meal together, something they hadn't enjoyed in quite some time. The next day, on May 15, 1930, Julia Otis returned with Mary Agnes, and as soon as Mary Agnes saw her mother, she rushed into her arms and hugged her tightly. Julia brought not only more groceries for the Moron family, but also some exciting news. She revealed that she had managed to secure a better job for Michael. Adding to the joy, she carried a bag full of clothes for the upcoming baby. Catherine was elated. It felt like they were finally receiving the help they needed. Julia's kindness made Catherine trust her more, as she seemed to genuinely care for their family's well-being. At that moment, Julia made another request. She asked Catherine if she could take Mary Agnes shopping nearby, as the little girl's clothes were looking worn and her shoes were in bad shape. Catherine, feeling grateful for all of Julia's assistance, agreed to the idea, thinking it was a thoughtful gesture. However, Mary Agnes seemed to resist going with Julia. She started crying and clung to her mother, not wanting to leave her side. Despite this, Catherine handed her daughter over to Julia, trusting that everything would be fine. They left for the shop, which was just a short distance away. Catherine believed they would be back soon. Unfortunately, after they left, neither Julia nor Mary Agnes were ever seen again. As the hours went by, Catherine became increasingly concerned about why they were taking so long. At first, she thought that maybe Julia had taken Mary Agnes out for lunch, but it shouldn't have taken such a long time. As more time passed, Catherine began to feel that something wasn't right. She started regretting her decision to let her 2-year-old daughter go with Julia. Later, when Michael returned home from work, Catherine explained the entire situation to him. They searched everywhere for Mary Agnes and Julia, but there was no trace of them. Feeling helpless, they made the decision to contact the Chicago Police Department and inform them that their daughter was missing. The police wanted a detailed description of Julia, but Catherine could only provide a few details. She mentioned that the woman appeared to be in her 20s, around 5 feet 2 inches tall, and weighed about 125 pounds. The most distinctive feature that Catherine remembered was that the woman had prominent teeth. The next day, on May 16, 1930, around 8:30 p.m., the Moron family received a letter. This letter was written on special paper and had a mark on it that showed it was sent out at 4:30 p.m. It was sent using a special delivery service, and inside the envelope, there was a $5 bill. The letter read, "Please, don't be alarmed. I've taken your little girl to California with me. I have hired a special nurse to care for her. We'll be back in 2 months. By that time, you will be on your feet again and will be able to care for her." She didn't even cry a bit. She is outfitted like a princess. In the meantime, I'll help all I can to get you on your feet, and don't worry about anything else. When you get this letter, we'll be on our way to California. Catherine hurriedly told the police about the letter, desperately wishing they could locate Mary Agnes. The police scoured every corner of Chicago's railway stations, hoping for a sign of Mary Agnes getting on a train with the woman Catherine had described, but it felt like they had disappeared like a puff of smoke. The police got wind of a young girl with blonde hair, possibly Mary Agnes, who had been seen on a train bound for Kansas, accompanied by a woman and a nurse. Yet when the train pulled into Kansas, it seemed like all three had become invisible. The police were unable to find any of them. As more people heard about the letter, witnesses came forward with their stories about a woman who seemed to match Julia Otis's description. A staff member at Goldblatt's department store, located around 8 miles from the Moroney's home on Ashland and Chicago Avenue, came forward. She mentioned that a woman like Julia had bought a bunch of baby clothes using a new $50 bill at the store. Interestingly, these were the very same clothes Julia had given Catherine for her upcoming baby. Another woman stepped forward and informed the police that on May 15, 1930, she witnessed an unusual incident in a store in downtown Chicago. She noticed a lady with a young girl, and it seemed like the lady was anxious while dictating a letter to an older woman. This was striking, as writing the letter was a task she could have done on her own. The police weren't able to determine the identity of the older woman. It's unclear whether Julia used the older woman to write the letter, possibly to disguise her handwriting, or if the older woman had some connection to Julia. On May 19, 1930, the Moron family received another letter, this time from a woman named Mrs. Alice Henderson. She claimed to be the cousin of Julia Otis. In the letter, Alice explained that Julia had experienced a lot of loss recently. Her husband and child had both passed away in the previous year. Alice mentioned that Julia was feeling very lonely and was struggling emotionally, even on the verge of a breakdown. Her doctor recommended a trip to California to help her mental state. Julia had decided to take Mary Agnes with her because she saw her lost child in her. Alice thought this would provide Catherine some relief from childcare, allowing her to focus on the new baby. She assured that she would bring Mary Agnes back safe and sound once Julia felt better. Alice also mentioned that she would continue to provide assistance to the Moron family. Catherine shared this letter with the authorities and also recounted an incident that happened on the day Mary Agnes was kidnapped. After Julia left, an elderly man who said he was a social worker paid a visit. Catherine thought he might have clues about Julia, but when she mentioned calling the police and asked him to wait, he quickly dashed away and vanished. It was a puzzling encounter that Catherine had forgotten about amid all the worries about Mary Agnes. The investigators found this sudden revelation intriguing. Wondering why Catherine hadn't mentioned it before, she explained that in all the stress, she overlooked this peculiar encounter with a mysterious man. The police also found something unusual. 2 letters that looked like they were written by the same person were sent by 2 different women on separate days. This made the police curious. They began to suspect the Moron family might be hiding something more serious. They thought the family could be making up stories to cover up a darker truth. They even considered the possibility that Mary Agnes might have been hurt or even killed by her parents, maybe by accident. On May 20th, 1930, the police took Catherine and Michael into custody and asked them about Mary Agnes' possible murder. However, the couple consistently stuck to their story about their daughter's kidnapping. After an hour of questioning, they were allowed to go back home. The police's search for Mary Agnes didn't yield any results, and as time went on, the progress in the case became slow, with no new leads. But just when people in the community might have started to forget about Mary Agnes, something significant happened a year later in 1931 in Rockford, Illinois. This discovery brought a fresh perspective to the case. On Thursday, July 23, 1931, about 14 months after the kidnapping, people reported seeing a girl who seemed a lot like Mary Agnes in Rockford, Illinois. A Native American lady named Martha Thompson, who was quite old, was spotted pushing a cart. Inside the cart, there was a 3-year-old white girl, and they were both going towards the west. The police decided to question Martha about this. She explained that she was planning to join a circus. The little girl looked chubby and happy, and she didn't seem to be bothered by all the attention. She had a tan complexion, blonde hair, and blue eyes, just like Mary Agnes. Martha said that the little girl's mother, a woman named Florence Fuller, had abandoned her. Martha wanted to take care of the girl, but the authorities wouldn't allow it until they could confirm the girl's true identity. The authorities got in touch with the Moron family to confirm if the baby was their missing Mary Agnes. Filled with hope, Michael and Catherine journeyed 89 miles to Rockford to meet the little girl, hoping she might be their beloved daughter. But when they saw the little girl, Catherine began to have doubts. She closely studied the girl, examining her teeth and body, and something just didn't add up. She felt like something was missing. After careful consideration, Catherine concluded that this girl was not their daughter. One distinguishing factor was that Mary Agnes had a red mark on her arm, but the girl they met in Rockford didn't have that mark. This difference made it clear that she wasn't their daughter. This news broke Michael and Catherine's hearts all over again. Despite a lot of searching, the police couldn't find Mary Agnes. Over the years, various newspapers ran stories about the case, hoping to uncover new leads. But sadly, as time went on without any new information, the investigation came to a standstill and the case went cold. 22 years had passed since Mary Agnes vanished. During this time, Michael and Catherine had become parents to a big family, with 5 boys bearing the names Michael Jr., Patrick, George, Harold, and William. They also had 2 daughters named Anastasia and Catherine. The media would occasionally share stories about Mary Agnes, especially when other children went missing, to keep her name in the public's attention. In 1952, a reporter named Edna Wright from the Chicago Daily News was working on a regular story about missing people in the city. While doing her research, she came across the case file of Mary Agnes' disappearance. After reading the file, Edna decided to meet with the Moron family to get a recent picture of their children. When she looked at the photos, she noticed something important. All the family members resembled each other. This similarity caught her attention. Edna then sent copies of the family photos to a newspaper in California, hoping to find a woman who resembled the Moron children. This woman would now be around 24 years old. Edna believed that this woman might actually be the missing Mary Agnes. The Oakland Tribune in California ran the story on February 24, 1952. In San Pablo, California, a young auto mechanic named Everett McClelland read the story and something caught his attention. Among the pictures of the 7 children, he couldn't help but focus on Anastasia. He began to wonder how much she resembled his own wife, Mary Beck McClelland. Curiously, Mary Beck was also 24 years old and had grown up in Martinez, California. At the age of 16, after she got married, Mary Beck McClelland got a surprising revelation from a family friend that she had been adopted. Unfortunately, her father had already passed away by then. She went to her mother, Nora Beck, to ask her about it, but her mother denied it. In their quest for answers, they looked through courthouse records and uncovered Mary Beck's adoption papers. These papers showed that she was adopted in the 1930s, around the same time Mary Agnes had disappeared. This discovery led Everett to think that maybe his wife could actually be the missing Mary Agnes. Excited by the possibility, he reached out to the Oakland Tribune in California to share his thoughts about how much his wife resembled the Moron family and how she might be the long-lost Mary Agnes. Back then, they didn't have the technology to do DNA testing like we do now, so they had to use other methods that were mostly based on theories. They collected blood samples from Michael, Catherine, and Mary Beck, and they did more than 124 tests on these samples. They also looked at their facial features and compared them. They even made models of the Moron family's teeth and Mary Beck's teeth to compare them. They looked closely at their dental impressions. Experts in fingerprints also compared Mary Beck's fingerprints and palm prints to those of the Moron family. All these tests and examinations showed that Mary Beck shared many family traits with the Moron family, making it likely that she was indeed Mary Agnes. On September 4, 1952, Mary Beck traveled to Chicago to meet the family she had been separated from for a long time. Catherine, who was now 40 years old and had been hoping for her oldest daughter, Mary Agnes, to come back home. When Mary Beck and Catherine saw each other, tears filled their eyes, and a picture was taken as they hugged tightly. It seemed like the mystery was finally solved after waiting for 22 years. However, Nora, Mary Beck's adoptive mother, strongly believed that Mary Beck wasn't kidnapped, but rather adopted. Nora explained that she had been a foster mother and knew Mary Beck well before they officially adopted her. Another person, Dr. E.W. Mary of California, claimed that he had delivered Mary Beck on November 17, 1927, and she spent her early 2 years in an orphanage before being adopted. Furthermore, an important missing detail came to light. Mary Agnes had a scar from a hernia operation on her belly button. This scar was not present on Mary Beck. Despite all the confusion and uncertainty, the Moron family still embraced Mary Beck as a part of their family. Mary Beck and Anastasia quickly became close friends because they looked very similar to each other. They even dressed in similar clothes and had the same shoe size. Despite Catherine's positive opinion of Mary Beck, doubts lingered in her mind about whether Mary Beck was truly her lost daughter, Mary Agnes. In a newspaper interview, Catherine emphatically stated that Mary Beck was not the daughter she had been longing for. In 1957, Michael, who was 58 years old, passed away, carrying a heavy heart burdened by the loss of his cherished daughter, as he could never accept Mary Beck as Mary Agnes. Catherine, too, battled a haunting depression that lingered for years. Tragically, she left this world in 1962 at the young age of 49, marking the end of a journey filled with sorrow and uncertainty. As time passed, Mary Beck continued to stay connected with the Moron family. She spent her life with them and eventually passed away in 2005, reaching the age of 77. However, throughout her life, she couldn't be certain if she truly was Mary Agnes. Then, 3 years after her passing, her family decided to do a DNA test to finally settle the question of their connection to the Moron family. The test results showed that Mary Beck's DNA didn't match the DNA of Catherine and Michael. This made it clear that Mary Beck McClelland was not Mary Agnes. Despite all this, the case remained open for the next 14 years. Finally, on June 10, 2023, a detective named Jose Rodriguez from the Cook County Sheriff's Office was given the task of investigating the Mary Agnes case. This was all part of a project led by Sheriff Tom Dart, focused on finding missing persons. Dart and Rodriguez sat down to tackle this century-old mystery together. It was the oldest missing person case in the history of Chicago. To begin their investigation, they looked for the original police reports. They decided to create a family tree and trace down as many members of the Moron family as possible. Rodriguez shared that he started searching for family members of Mary Agnes who were not on the family tree. They also took their search online, and eventually he stumbled upon an online forum where someone had identified themselves as a Moron and reached out for contact. The detective uncovered an interesting lead. Some Moron family members had accounts with DNA testing companies like Ancestry, so they decided to ask these family members to send in their... He showed her the DNA results and all the evidence he had gathered, proving her connection to the Moron family. Terry couldn't believe it. All along, she had been convinced that her grandmother's family came from Poland. She was quite sure the detective must be mistaken. However, after some consideration, she agreed to take a DNA test to find out the truth. When the DNA results arrived, Terry was truly surprised. They indicated that she was mostly Irish, which was unexpected for her. Even more intriguing, the results showed significant genetic links between Terry and many of the Moron cousins identified by Rodriguez. This strongly suggested that Terry was indeed a cousin to the Moron family. When Detective Rodriguez inquired about her mother's name, who could potentially be the real Mary Agnes, Terry disclosed that her mother's name was Jeanette Burchard. Born on April 14, 1928, Jeanette Burchard's life took some unexpected turns. Raised by her mother, Jeanette Soleric Darris Anderson, and stepfather Frank Darris, she was brought up with strong Catholic values. Jeanette grew up well-educated and later spent more than 5 decades working as a dedicated nurse. Jeanette first married Edward Jennings in the 1940s, and together they had 3 children. Decades later, after experiencing life's ups and downs, she found love once more and married Earl Burchard. Both of her husbands have since passed away. Alongside her daughter, Terry Arnold, Jeanette was a mother to Barbara Joan Jennings and Edward Clifton Jennings Jr., both of whom tragically passed away, adding another tragic touch to her story. Jeanette always felt a unique connection to Chicago, as she occasionally visited the city, the place where her life's puzzle was partially hidden. In an intriguing twist, Jeanette's stepfather, Frank Darris, once hinted that the woman who raised her wasn't her biological mother, leaving a lingering question that was never fully answered. This mysterious comment perplexed Jeanette throughout her life. Sadly, she left this world in 2003 at the age of 73, never having a chance to reconnect with the family she had lost. Finally, after 93 years of waiting, the Cold Case Unit announced that the oldest case of Mary Agnes Moron was closed. After some time, Arnold, the daughter of Mary Agnes, and the Moron family had multiple conversations. They expressed mutual delight in getting to know each other. Arnold even shared pictures of her mother with her newfound cousins. She strongly believes her mother would have embraced the idea of being part of this extended family, relishing in the sense of belonging. Arnold is convinced that if her mother were alive today, she would have eagerly connected with the Moronis to share in the newfound connection and the joy it brings. The case of Keely Bunker. What happens when a trusted friend who is meant to keep you safe turns out to be the very monster you should flee from? In the case of Keely, she discovered the dark and unsettling truth behind her friend's seemingly innocent smiles. But unfortunately, it was too late. This is the heart-wrenching story of Keely Bunker. We extend our heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Keely, who will forever cherish her memory. Before the 19th of September 2019, Keely was full of life. Born on the 7th of September 1999, Keely was both a blessing to her parents and a role model to her siblings. Her mother described her as a precious and beautiful daughter, while her sister described her as one of the most vibrant, caring, and beautiful souls this earth has ever seen. She was a go-getter who had worked her way through the hurdles of life to get a degree and become a teacher. On the day she met her tragic fate, she was to go in for an interview to become an assistant teacher. But that promising life was cut short by her childhood friend, Wesley Street. Wesley and Keely had known each other since they were in infant school. Although they might not have been best of friends, They were quite close because they maintained their friendship through the years. It was for this reason Keely invited him to her 20th birthday celebration after the musician's concert at the O2 on September 18, 2019. Keely was very excited about that day. On the day of the concert, Keely and her best friend Monique Riggin met Wesley at the New Street station in Birmingham. After the concert, the trio went to a nightclub where they partied until 2:40 a.m. Then they got a taxi back to Tamworth, where they stayed. Keely's house was a walking distance from where they alighted, and Monique had asked her to stay the night due to concerns about her safety. But Keely didn't want to miss the job interview she had fixed the next day and said, "I've got Wes. He'll walk me back. It'll be fine." That was the last time Monique saw her. The next day, Keely didn't get to the interview, and friends and family tried to contact her. By 5:30 p.m. that day, her father filed a missing persons report. After reaching out to friends, the police discovered Wesley was the last person to see her, and he was immediately brought in for questioning. The 20-year-old man claimed to have parted ways with Keely when they reached a telephone box close to his home, leaving her to walk the rest of the path alone. As part of the investigation, the police officers told him to take them to the exact location, and he pointed it out. He even showed the officers the exact route they had walked to that very spot, and they couldn't be more grateful for his help, so they let him go. But at 9 p.m., her uncle, Jason Brown, who was part of the search party, discovered Keely's body submerged in a pond in Wigington Park in Tamworth. Her clothes had been taken off, and there were marks on her neck indicating that she had been strangled to death. It was a horrifying sight. Wesley immediately became the first suspect. The police arrested Wesley, and the interrogation began. He stuck to the fact that he had left Keely alive at the telephone box. But when they went through his mobile phone, his GPS showed that he went to the location of the murder 7 times that day. And when he tried to argue his innocence, the CCTV footage showed him and Keely by Tamworth Rugby Club later than the time he claimed to have left her. His bank card and jacket were found in the park, and the post-mortem examination of Keely revealed Street's DNA. With this evidence, he was charged with the sexual assault and murder of Keely. Initially, during the trial, Wesley kept arguing his innocence. He mentioned that he was so drunk he messed up the description of how the night went. He promised that he had left her happy, and she seemed happy. However, later into the trial, he claimed to have accidentally killed her during consensual sex in the park. He said Keely had flirted and teased him as they walked home, and in the end, they had found themselves in the park. But you should note that before that confession, he claimed that they were childhood friends who had never entertained any ideas of romance. So it was clear that he kept changing his statements to go in line with the evidence that was being presented. Wesley went on to describe how his GPS location showed him returning to the murder spot several times that day. He said that after accidentally murdering her during a moment of passion, he dumped the body in the pond and kept returning to the location to cover Keely with branches. When he was asked why he didn't tell the truth when he was asked by the police and Keely's relatives before the body was discovered, he said, "I didn't know how to act and explain to other people how she died, because I felt embarrassed in myself and very scared to explain to the police, everyone, my mom and dad." However, the evidence presented by the prosecution showed otherwise. On their walk home, Wesley had persuaded Keely to go towards the rugby club close to the park on the pretext of going for a smoke. On getting to the park, he had forced himself on her and held her in a choke hold while she was fighting for freedom. His claims that he killed her in a moment of passion couldn't have been possible because it would take more than a few seconds for her to die. Then, when she died, he took her to the pond, covered her up with branches, and went home. The evidence presented before the jurors was already enough to find him guilty. But before the sentencing date, more chilling evidence about Wesley's horrible nature came to light. Due to the severity of the case, media outlets were quick to post details about the trial. This unknowingly triggered a reaction from women who had been previous victims of Wesley. In the court, Wesley portrayed himself as a young man who had made innocent mistakes. His father also testified that he was autistic and needed help understanding the proceedings of the trial. However, 3 women who had been victims of his sexual assault came forward to completely refute any claim of his innocence. In the year 2015, he sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl. In 2017, his victim was a 15-year-old girl. And just a few months before Keely's death, his victim was another 20-year-old. Although investigations show there was a possibility there were more victims, those three were the only ones courageous enough to step forward. One of them told the court that she thought she was never going to get over it, but she had fought the sickening thoughts that almost overwhelmed her. Another said she was really scared to tell anyone because of how ashamed she felt. But after hearing about Keely's case, she just couldn't remain quiet. The third survivor shared how she blamed herself for the incident because she had gone to his house. Hannah Swee, the lead prosecutor, described Wesley's offense as a pattern of offending. She described Wesley as a man who tried to get what he wanted without having any regard for the consequences. She also mentioned that his innocent look and friendly character made his victims less wary of him. Reports show that his victims were either friends or acquaintances. It's easy to have a stereotypical image of a perpetrator, but what we often do not think about is a young lad who is popular, who has many friends, who is well known and liked, said Detective Inspector Cheryl Hannon, the senior investigating officer on the case. She also described Wesley as a devious and manipulating character, noting his arrogance in playing the martyr. He acted as if people were blaming him unfairly when he knew full well where she was and what he'd done, and the efforts he'd gone to concealing it to delay people finding her. His friend trusted him to walk her home that night, and it's only Wesley to blame that she didn't make it home. He was trusted to walk her home, but he manipulated the situation, preyed upon her, and ultimately raped and murdered her. He then went on to put himself at the center of the investigation, lying to the police, her family, and her friends that she was safe and well, changing his lies as the evidence was presented to him. Wesley was sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole. During the sentencing, the judge described how Wesley had cut the beautiful life of Keely short just to satisfy his desires. She lost the opportunity of fulfilling her life ambition of helping to educate young children, and her family had lost the company of their beloved daughter, sister, and niece. Keely's relatives also shared how they would never completely heal enough to forgive Wesley. Her mother, Debbie, said that as Keely's family, the outcome of this trial will never be enough in terms of justice. Keely was the kindest, most caring, and innocent young lady, and she was only just starting out in her life. Such is the hell they feel, they are incapable of showing any forgiveness. The horrible fate of Keely is a reminder that we can never truly tell who a person is. Everyone should always take precautions when they're out so late, because a person who you might deem your protector might actually be the predator. Managi was born on May 23, 1989. There is little information about her early life. Records indicate she had a brother named Norris Starren, but whether she had other siblings remains unknown. By the year 2023, at the age of 34, Managi was a single mother of 3 children. Her residence was a modest apartment located at 1428 7th Street in St. Paul, Ramsey County, Minnesota. It remains uncertain whether she had ever been married. Accounts from those acquainted with Managi during this time painted a picture of a likable individual. Those who encountered her spoke of her positivity, patience, and kindness that extended to everyone she encountered, regardless of their background. However, amid these commendable qualities, Managi grappled with personal demons. She faced the challenges of drug addiction and mental health issues. These struggles were known to her family and played a role in her children not living with her, as she was struggling to overcome her own battles. The circumstances surrounding Managi's addiction and mental health concerns certainly prevented her from providing a stable environment for her children. Despite the challenges, life continued to unfold for Managi. Then something unexpected happened. On May 1, 2023, the St. Paul police received a distress call from Managi's father. During the call, he revealed troubling details about Managi's struggles with drug addiction and mental health issues. He disclosed that she had plans to enter a drug treatment center, but failed to show up. The last contact he had with Managi was on April 18, 2023. She had appeared paranoid and afraid. Her father expressed concerns that she was frightened of a boyfriend. With the call concluded, officers sprang into action. They looked for Managi at her apartment. Unfortunately, she was nowhere to be found. In their pursuit of answers, the investigators located and engaged in conversation with an individual simply identified as the father of one of Manag's children. The man revealed that he too had not heard from Manage, and this deviated from her usual routine. Normally, she would regularly check in on him, due to their shared responsibility for their son. He shared his concern, emphasizing that it was highly unusual for Manage to go more than 8 hours without reaching out to ensure their child's well-being. Additionally, the man disclosed that Manage had reached out to him from various phone numbers in the past. However, their last conversation was on April 21, 2023. The investigators also tracked down a neighbor of Manage. During their conversations, the neighbor shared a disturbing observation. According to the neighbor, she had witnessed Manage at one time, bearing a black eye and red marks on her neck. It's not clear when this happened exactly, but the neighbor had been alarmed by the distressing sight and confronted Manage. She asked Manage if she had been assaulted. To her dismay, Manage had confirmed the neighbor's suspicions, despite the neighbor's immediate instinct to call the police. Manage pleaded against involving law enforcement, convinced it would only worsen the situation. This revelation added a layer of complexity to the investigation, leaving the officers grappling with the haunting reality that had enveloped Manage's life. Continuing their investigation, the detectives proceeded to speak with the manager of Manage's apartment complex. He provided them with some valuable insights. They learned that Manage had a boyfriend named Joe, who frequented her apartment despite not being listed on the lease. The manager then provided the investigators with a phone number associated with Joe. With the obtained phone number in hand, the investigators conducted their inquiries and confirmed that it belonged to a 40-year-old man named Joseph Steve Jorgensen. Presenting Jorgensen's photograph to the manager, they sought confirmation, and the manager identified him as the individual known to him as Manage's boyfriend. This revelation marked a turning point in the investigation, setting the stage for an unsettling and bizarre series of events to follow. Now, an apartment surveillance camera situated near Manage's residence proved to be a crucial piece of evidence. On May 24, 2023, investigators were informed by the apartment manager that the surveillance video had been found, capturing an alarming incident from April 21, 2023. In the footage, Managi was seen fleeing from her apartment in evident distress, with Jorgensen, her boyfriend, in swift pursuit. He forcefully turned her around and directed her back into the apartment. The video indicated that this was the last known sighting of Managi entering her apartment on that fateful day between 5:55 and 6 p.m. But there was no corresponding footage showing her exiting the premises. Further examination of the surveillance recordings revealed multiple instances of Jorgensen entering and leaving the apartment between April 21, 2023 and April 28, 2023. Astonishingly, it was determined that Jorgensen accessed the apartment a total of 28 times during this period. Adding to the intrigue, the apartment management confirmed that Managi possessed only one set of keys for the residence. The surveillance footage captured Jorgensen utilizing a key for every visit he made to the apartment. As all these discoveries came to light, the investigators were left with a multitude of unsettling questions. What happened during Jorgensen's repeated visits to Managi's apartment? And most importantly, where was Managi now? Further analysis of the surveillance footage also revealed that at 4:55 p.m. on May 28, 2023, Jorgensen was captured on camera carrying 2 duffel bags and a suitcase as he exited the apartment. He loaded the bags into a pickup truck, bearing the Minnesota license plate and LV 677. Taking a seat on the driver's side, Jorgensen swiftly drove away. The investigators soon discovered that the pickup truck belonged to a man residing in the apartment building at 89th Century Avenue in Maplewood. In the wake of these developments, investigators sought out a family friend who possessed crucial insights into Managi's behavior and relationships. The family friend revealed that despite Managi's struggles with drugs and crises, she had never gone more than 24 hours without contacting her loved ones. This consistent pattern had made her sudden absence all the more concerning. Additionally, the family friend disclosed a conversation with Jorgensen, whom he had spoken to over the phone following Managi's disappearance. Jorgensen had told him at the time that Managi had left for the store but never returned. According to the family friend, Jorgensen also expressed concerns that a man named Carcel may have caused harm to Managi. Jorgensen had described this Carcel as a suspicious individual. The family friend revealed that he had not been in contact with Jorgensen since that conversation. Armed with this newfound information, the investigators recognized the gravity of the situation at hand. They couldn't ignore the fact that Jorgensen had made no effort to report Managi as missing to the police. Furthermore, the evidence indicated that no one apart from Jorgensen had entered Managi's apartment after her disappearance. This revelation heightened their suspicions, and they directed their focus squarely onto Jorgensen as a person of interest. With growing concerns and mounting evidence, the police decided to conduct a thorough search of Managi's apartment, accompanied by a property manager. An officer entered the premises. As they stepped inside, their attention was immediately drawn to the unsettling discoveries within. The officer and property manager noticed that the window screen to one of the bedroom windows lay discarded on the floor. Furthermore, a closer examination of the living room revealed a television with a cracked screen in multiple places. The property manager confirmed that the screen had not been damaged before this discovery. As they continued their search, the officers noticed a broken glass panel on the microwave. It showed signs of having been cleaned up. In Managi's bedroom, they observed that the bedsheet had been partially removed, revealing a foam pad atop the mattress. To their surprise, the foam pad bore a large hole that had been deliberately cut and removed. Adding to the disconcerting scene, red stains were visible at the foot of the bed. These findings intensified the growing unease surrounding Managi's disappearance, propelling the investigators further into a labyrinth of unsettling clues and harrowing possibilities. Following the necessary legal procedures, the officers obtained a warrant to thoroughly search and process Managi's apartment for vital forensic evidence. The warrant was executed on May 25, 2023. Careful examination of the apartment by crime scene technicians unveiled a disconcerting truth. Substantial amounts of blood were discovered in the living room, notably on the couch, the floor, and the kitchen area. The telltale signs of an attempted cleanup indicated that someone had made desperate efforts to remove the traces of the blood. It became increasingly evident that someone had been seriously injured or even died within the apartment walls. In subsequent analysis, the preliminary findings confirmed the grim reality. Blood samples collected from the scene belonged to none other than Managi herself. Continuing her investigation, the authorities uncovered vital information regarding Managi's finances. It was revealed that she received assistance through the state of Minnesota in the form of Electronic Benefits Transfer, EBT card. This card enables recipients of government aid, such as food stamps, to make direct purchases from retailers. Recognizing the significance of this revelation, a warrant was swiftly obtained to access Managi's EBT account records. The investigation unveiled a series of transactions that occurred after her last known sighting on April 21, 2023. One such transaction took place on May 9, 2023, where Jorgensen used Managi's EBT card to conduct an ATM withdrawal at the Speedway located at 11th Century Avenue, North in Maplewood. That same day, he used Managi's EBT card at the Dollar Tree store, located at 7150 Valley Creek Plaza in Woodbury. There he made a rather peculiar purchase. His shopping list included a cleaning bucket, 2 boxes of saran wrap, paper towels, garbage bags, liquid cleaner, latex gloves, and disinfectant wipes. This was a suspicious assortment of supplies that piqued the interest of the investigators. On May 11, 2023, Jorgensen made another transaction using Managi's EBT card, this time at the Cub Food Store, situated at 1177 Clarence Street in St. Paul, Ramsey County. He also used the card at a different Dollar Tree store, situated at 7085 10th Street, North in Oakdale. This time around, he procured more paper towels or additional boxes of saran wrap, cleaning products, and disinfectant wipes. The recurrent purchase of such items only served to deepen the mystery surrounding Jorgensen's activities and intentions. Adding another layer of entry, authorities uncovered evidence implicating another individual, simply identified as ZD. This ZD also utilized Managi's EBT card. Following this, investigators proceeded to obtain a search warrant to access information related to Jorgensen's Gmail and Google accounts. Analyzing the obtained data, a series of noteworthy Google searches made by Jorgensen came to light, further deepening the investigators' concerns. On April 21, 2023, Jorgensen had searched for the word jugular. On May 1, 2023, he searched for, "What do police do with a missing persons report?" On May 3, 2023, Jorgensen saw information on how to clear cookies from an Android phone. On May 27, 2023, his search query was how to remove GPS from a Lime scooter. On June 4, 2023, Jorgensen looked up lime for soil. Now at this point, one thing you should know is that lime, the substance Jorgensen had inquired about, can be utilized to speed up the decomposition process of a body and also the associated odors. The police were well aware of this fact, and this further heightened their concerns regarding Jorgensen's potential involvement in the disappearance of Managi. Based on the compelling evidence against Jorgensen, the police made a decisive move. The apartment investigators focused on and obtained a warrant to search was Jorgensen's. On June 26, 2023, a SWAT team moved in to execute the warrants, prepared for a potentially volatile encounter. As the officers confronted Jorgensen in his apartment, he responded with resistance, barricading himself within his bedroom. In a shocking turn of events, to the dismay of all present, Jorgensen started a fire, further escalating the danger and urgency of the situation. With utmost caution, the SWAT team made their move. A struggle ensued, and Jorgensen fiercely fought against the officers, even making an attempt to seize the firearm of a SWAT officer. Eventually, the officers successfully apprehended Jorgensen. As a precautionary measure, he was promptly transported to the region's hospital for evaluation. This was to ensure his well-being and address any potential mental health concerns that may have contributed to his actions. In addition to Jorgensen, 2 other individuals were present in the apartment when he was apprehended. One of them, an unidentified female, bore marks of physical harm. She had multiple bruises, scratches, and a red neck. The woman would later tell the police that Jorgensen had strangled her and issued threats of violence, including chilling words like, "The neighbors won't hear you scream." The second person in the apartment was Jorgensen's roommate. During the standoff between Jorgensen and the police, the roommate had taken refuge in his own bedroom. The roommate was also taken into custody without resistance. Later, at the St. Paul Police Department, the roommate provided a statement during an interview. He disclosed that he suffered from a traumatic brain injury that had resulted in a loss of his sense of smell. Additionally, he revealed a long-standing acquaintance with Jorgensen, notably the roommate clarified. Due to his Monday through Friday work schedule, he had minimal interaction with Jorgensen or the women Jorgensen brought to the apartment. Following these events, officers interviewed Zedi, a friend of Jorgensen. He was the other man who had also been observed using Managit's EBT card. The exact timing of the interview with Zedi remains unclear. During the discussion, Zedi revealed that he had only met Manage once or twice, emphasizing that he did not have a close relationship with her. According to Zedi, when he inquired about Manage, Jorgensen informed him that she had been admitted to a mental health facility. Zedi further disclosed that it was Jorgensen who provided him with both Manage's EBT card and its corresponding PIN, leading him to assume that Jorgensen had permission to use the card. In addition, officers interviewed the apartment manager responsible for Jorgensen's residence. The manager disclosed that multiple complaints had been lodged around May 15 or 16, 2023, regarding a putrid odor coming from Jorgensen's apartment. The foul smell permeated the entire building. It was described by the manager as resembling that of a dead animal. Shedding further light on the situation, the manager revealed that on May 18, 2023, both he and a maintenance employee attempted to gain access to the apartment for inspection. However, Jorgensen responded with verbal hostility and physically prevented them from entering a particular bedroom, which appeared to be the source of the odor. Undeterred, the manager informed Jorgensen and his roommate that the apartment needed to be cleaned within a week, to which they complied. The manager then disclosed that shortly after, he and the maintenance employee witnessed Jorgensen carrying and dragging large black duffel bags out of the apartment. Struck by the sight, They had exchanged remarks suggesting the possibility of Jorgensen transporting a dead body. In response to these findings, the Forensic Services Unit of the St. Paul Police Department carefully processed Jorgensen's apartment. Their report revealed the discovery of a large pool of blood in the front closet, which coincided with the location from where the foul odor had been reported. The blood had seeped through the carpet and carpet pad, and the presence of other biological material and recent maggot activity further compounded the disturbing nature of the scene. Additionally, blood was also found in the closet where Jorgensen had attempted to start the fire. Furthermore, as part of the investigation, officers recovered 2 padlock keys within Jorgensen's apartment following his arrest. Upon reviewing Jorgensen's phone records, it was discovered that his phone had registered a ping within the vicinity of an ice storage unit situated at 881 Were Drive in Woodbury on May 18, 2023. Someone using Jorgensen's roommate's name began renting a storage unit at the facility on May 5, 2023. Notably, the access code assigned to the unit was used to enter the facility precisely at the time when Jorgensen's phone pinged in the same area. Recognizing the significance of this information, investigators swiftly obtained a warrant to search the storage unit. On June 28, 2023, 2 days after Jorgensen's arrest, investigators proceeded to the designated storage unit. As they approached the scene, they were greeted by a distinct and terrible odor, consistent with decomposing flesh. One of the keys obtained from Jorgensen's apartment appeared to fit one of the padlocks. However, the investigators eventually resorted to cutting the 2 padlocks to gain access. Upon entering, they discovered the presence of several items: a large cooler carefully wrapped in plastic, a blue duffel bag, and a compact carry-on suitcase. Notably, one of these bags matched the same bag Jorgensen was observed removing from Managier's apartment in the video footage. Additionally, atop the cooler, a green tote was found containing cleaning supplies consistent with those previously purchased by Jorgensen. Acting under the direction of the Forensic Services Unit, 2 coolers and a duffel bag were carefully removed from the unit. A distinct and overpowering stench of decomposing flesh emanated from these containers. Enclosed within multiple layers of plastic, the contents remained inaccessible until they were transported to the medical examiner's office for further examination. Upon examination using an X-ray machine, it was revealed that the coolers and bag contained a human body. The larger cooler yielded a torso, while the larger bag held the arms and legs. The smaller cooler, on the other hand, contained a head. Subsequently, the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office conducted an autopsy on the recovered remains. The first set of remains, the torso, was carefully removed from the large cooler. Extensively enveloped in layers of saran wrap and multiple bags, great care had been taken to preserve and conceal it. The next set of remains to be removed was the head, similarly encased in numerous layers of saran wrap and bags. Finally, the third set of remains consisting of 2 arms, 2 thighs, and the remaining portions of the legs and feet were removed from the duffel bag. These remains had also been carefully wrapped in a substantial amount of saran wrap. Unwrapping the remains proved to be a time-consuming task for the medical examiner. With the completion of thorough examinations and analysis, the medical examiner successfully confirmed the identity of the remains as belonging to none other than Manhea. Identification was established through recognized tattoos and dental records. Tragically, the determination of the manner of her death led to the conclusion that it was a homicide. Following this, investigators turned their attention back to the surveillance footage obtained from Mangia's apartment, placing a particular focus on the bags that Jorgensen had removed from the premises. Upon careful review, it became increasingly apparent that Jorgensen had dismembered Manja within her own apartment, meticulously dividing her remains and placing them in various bags he carried out. Jorgensen faced a series of charges in connection to the death of Manja. He was formally accused of 1 count of second-degree murder, reflecting the gravity of his alleged actions. Additionally, Jorgensen was charged with arson for deliberately setting a fire within his apartment. During the confrontation with the SWAT team officers, the charges extended to include offenses such as threats of violence and disarming an officer. On the afternoon of June 30, 2023, Jorgensen appeared briefly in court to address the murder charge. Throughout the proceedings, He shook his head from side to side, reacting to Assistant Ramsey County Attorney Isabella Eastwood as she presented details from the complaint. Eastwood further requested that bail be set at $5 million, a proposal that received the approval of Judge Timothy Carey. Jorgensen remained mostly silent during the court appearance, offering only his name when prompted. The defense attorney opted to reserve any arguments regarding bail for a later date, suggesting that a comprehensive defense strategy was being prepared. During a press conference held on the same day Jorgensen made his court appearance, St. Paul Police Sergeant Mike Ernster unveiled a significant development that emerged during their ongoing investigation. It was revealed that another woman, Fanta Zivong, aged 33, another former girlfriend of Jorgensen, was also missing. Notably, the last known sighting of Zivong occurred in July 2021 in the company of none other than Jorgensen himself. Intriguingly, her absence had not been previously reported, prompting the police to initiate a recent missing person investigation. Tragically, on July 7th, police said in a news conference that they had found the remains of Fantasia Vong, 33, in a separate storage unit in Coon Rapids, north of Minneapolis and 30 miles from the unit where Starnes had been discovered. More details have not yet been released regarding this second victim, but it is widely believed that Jorgensen is responsible for her murder as well. Amid these ongoing developments, Manag's family expressed their gratitude to the police for pursuing every lead in their relentless search for the truth. As for Jorgensen, if found guilty, he could face a maximum sentence of up to 40 years in prison for the charge of second-degree murder. Jorgensen's next court appearance is scheduled for August 21, 2023. In the aftermath of this harrowing case, the truth surrounding Manag's untimely demise has been unraveled, and justice is now being pursued. The efforts of law enforcement have brought us closer to understanding the tragic events that unfolded. As we contemplate the chilling details surrounding Jorgensen's actions, a haunting question arises. Are we on the verge of uncovering a potential serial killer? The case of Carol Maltes. Carol Nicole Maltes was born on September 19, 1995, in a small province in Italy to parents Fabio and Josephine. Her mother was of Italian descent, while her father had Dutch heritage. When Carol was just 4 years old, her parents divorced, and she remained with her mother. Her father moved back to the Netherlands, where he remarried and had more children. Despite her father's lack of support, Josephine chose to stay in Italy and raise Carol on her own. Carol and her mother lived in a small community called Sestosenda. Her mother worked multiple jobs to provide Carol with a good education and opportunities for a better life. As a result, Carol grew into a beautiful, kind, and sociable young woman with many friends and an easy rapport with others. She was an active schoolgirl who participated in sports, such as horseback riding, and regularly attended a dance studio. Carol was fluent in 3 languages, loved traveling across Europe, and was an avid reader who could engage in conversations on a wide range of topics. As Carol entered her teenage years, she had many admirers and enjoyed being the center of attention. After completing her secondary education, Carol enrolled in a technical university to study industrial design, arts, and fashion. During her freshman year, Carol discovered she was pregnant after developing a romantic relationship with a young man studying architecture and design. The pregnancy was unexpected, and both Carol and her father were unprepared. Despite the challenges, Carol decided to keep the baby. In 2016, Carol, then 20 years old, gave birth to a son. The arrival of the baby significantly impacted her life. Due to financial constraints, she had to leave school to support themselves and their child. She relocated to Verona in search of better opportunities to provide for their family. Carol found employment as a sales consultant in a cosmetics and perfume retail chain when her son was 1 year old. Meanwhile, her boyfriend worked on projects from home and took care of their son. However, in mid-2019, Carol's life took another turn when she fell in love with Angelo. They began a passionate affair, secretly meeting in hotel rooms and exchanging messages at night. The affair lasted for about 6 months, during which they tried to spend as much time together as possible. But just before the new year, Carol's boyfriend discovered her infidelity and decided to end their relationship. Carol thought it was for the best that she was leaving, as she had already planned to move in with her new boyfriend. However, they faced a challenge. Angelo lived with his parents, and Carol couldn't join him with her child from a previous relationship. They decided to rent a place together, but their plans were disrupted, which left them jobless and unable to afford a home. Carol had to move into Angelo's parents' house and temporarily leave her 4-year-old son with his biological father. Carol struggled financially, but Angelo and his parents supported her as much as possible. She had to rely on them completely, unable to contribute to her son's care. To make matters worse, her mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which required expensive treatment. In desperation, Carol looked for ways to earn money from home to support her son and ailing mother. She turned to social media and created a YouTube channel, sharing her experiences of life in isolation. Although her content didn't attract much attention, her striking appearance drew comments, including some unwanted and inappropriate proposals. A subscriber suggested that Carol create an account on the adult content platform OnlyFans, citing her attractive appearance and potential for quick success. Taking this advice, Carol registered under the pseudonym Charlotte Angel and began posting intimate photos and videos. She quickly gained a large following and started earning a substantial income. As time went on, Carol's content became more explicit and bold and was appreciated by her fans. However, she keeps her work a secret from her boyfriend and relatives. This secrecy was short-lived because an acquaintance of hers discovered her account about 6 months later. Although Carol tried to justify her work as an art form that gave her financial security and personal fulfillment, her acquaintances did not accept it. Friends and acquaintances gradually distanced themselves from her, believing that her work was immoral and fearing that association with her would damage their reputations. Carol saw this reaction as prejudice and remained confident that she would achieve success and wealth as an adult film star. Carol's newfound popularity attracted the attention of adult film studios, and several directors approached her with offers to star in their productions. She soon accepted the invitation and participated in group photo sessions. Unbeknownst to her, her activities went unnoticed, and her boyfriend, Angelo, was shocked to discover that she was not working remotely as a designer as she had claimed she would. He felt lost and didn't know how to react because he had no plans to end their relationship. However, when Angelo's parents learned of Carol's profession, they urged him to end the relationship immediately, fearing she would bring shame to their family. At that time, Carol achieved financial stability thanks to her popular OnlyFans account and increasing salaries from film directors. In interviews, she expressed her intention to eventually complete her education and pursue a career in design or modeling. However, she increasingly loved her current job and was completely immersed in it. Despite her success, Carol faced constant moral pressure from those around her, who judged and tried to shame her. This led to certain psychological trauma. She defended her profession, calling it art, and supported women's right to choose a career without fear of judgment or social consequences. At the age of 25, Carol moved to Rescaldina, a small town in the province of Milan, with the intention of starting again. She planned to abandon her career in the adult entertainment industry and secure a job as a sales consultant at a perfume shop. However, this job of hers only lasted for a short time. A few months later, met David Fontana, a 42-year-old local banker with a passion for photography, especially nude photography. They connected online, where David was searching for photo models for his projects. Carol reciprocated his offer, and upon their first meeting, they felt an intense mutual attraction. Despite being married, David pursued a relationship with Carol and they began dating. Their relationship involved photo sessions that often led to intimate encounters. David soon discovered Carol's past experience in the adult industry and encouraged her to resume her career, citing her talent. However, David's feelings for Carol were complex. He loved her, desired to possess her, and also enjoyed watching her in adult films. In March 2021, David divorced his wife and moved in with Carol, allowing them to explore their most explicit fantasies together. He assisted her in creating content for OnlyFans, a platform where she gained immense popularity. However, David took a share of the profits from their joint work. As Carol's success grew, She began receiving lucrative offers from foreign directors and studios for film shoots. David was a jealous boyfriend who would become annoyed when others showed interest in Carol in public or tried to flirt with her. However, he never interfered with her work as an adult film actress, treating it as a normal job that she felt comfortable with. On the other hand, after Angelo and Carol broke up, Angelo confessed that he had missed her and asked to get back together, saying that he would accept her profession and not restrict her freedom. Carol appreciated Angelo's efforts but revealed that she had already met someone else. Even so, Angelo and Carol continued to communicate. However, when David found out, he became angry, threatened Angelo, and burned his car and finally break up with Carol. Angelo reported the incident to the police, who issued a restraining order against David but ultimately found no evidence linking him to arson. As Carol's career took off, Carol frequently traveled for filming and attracted a large following. She was trying to buy a house for herself and her son and planned to leave the adult film industry to focus on raising her son. To achieve this goal, she started creating custom videos for fans, who would send her scripts and pay her to make their fantasies come true. This idea brought high profits to Carol. Carol and David continued to work together in film despite their personal separation. During a September 2021 film shoot, Carol met co-star Salvatore Galdo and a romance blossomed. She and Salvatore eventually formalized their relationship, deciding to get married after taking the time to ensure they were both ready to move forward. As they planned their future together, they made a conscious effort to maintain their independence and keep their relationship private. They had learned from past experiences and wanted to approach their new relationship with a clear understanding of each other's needs and boundaries. In the end, Carol and Salvatore were able to build a strong foundation for their relationship, free from the entanglements of their past. They were able to move forward together, focusing on their shared future and leaving their complicated pasts behind. Carol's social media activity had slowed down significantly. Although new posts occasionally appeared on her account, she rarely interacted with anyone, keeping her responses brief. Her latest photo suggested she had recently gone on a seaside vacation, but she hadn't shared her plans with anyone. Everything was happening peacefully. But on March 20th, 2022, in a deserted area near Italian Borno, a passerby had made a disturbing discovery. He had been walking along a cliff when he had spotted large black bags of trash on a slope near a body of water. He had felt uncomfortable seeing garbage in such a beautiful location, so he had decided to throw it away. When he had approached one of the bags, he had noticed that it was unusually heavy. His curiosity had turned to horror when he had seen human fingers poking out through the tear in the polyethylene plastic. The man who quickly contacted the police, and when officers arrived, they found 4 bags with a human body that had been divided into 18 parts. Due to the extreme disfigurement, identifying the remains seemed unlikely. Forensic analysis showed that the victim was a young woman who had been deceased for at least 2 months, but the cause of death could not be determined. It was clear that the body had been stored in a freezer before being thrown off a cliff in a remote area, likely with the intention of remaining hidden for a long time. Upon impact, the bags tore, spilling some of the contents. The perpetrator had attempted to conceal the victim's identity by removing any distinctive features, such as tattoos. Although damaged remnants of these tattoos still existed, the skin in those areas had been severely damaged with burns from hot objects, cuts, and acid. Despite this, police were able to piece together fragments of the tattoos and compare them with a missing persons database. A breakthrough came when a news report about the body was broadcast, asking anyone who might recognize the described features to come forward. Shortly after, a woman who worked in adult films visited the police station and identified the tattoos as belonging to a colleague who had disappeared in early January. The actress knew the deceased as Charlotte, but did not know her real name. This new information was crucial as it allowed police to establish the victim's identity and real name. Once her identity was known, it was revealed that she had become engaged to Salvatore Galdo, a colleague, shortly before her disappearance. However, Galdo had not reported his fiancée missing, which raised suspicions. He was detained as the first suspect, but he appeared genuinely distraught over his fiancée's death and puzzled as to why he was under suspicion. According to Salvatore, He had been in regular contact with his fiancée through messaging apps and social media, and he had proof of their correspondence. He claimed that Carol had caught sick and was self-isolating, which is why he hadn't visited her. When asked why he hadn't called to check on her, he said he had spoken with David Fontana, who lived nearby and had promised to care for her. Although Salvatore's story was unclear and unconvincing, his testimony led police to a second suspect who needed to be questioned. However, before police could search for David, he appeared at the station to report a missing person. This was a surprising turn of events. David had not been following the news and did not expect the body to be found so quickly. When he learned that Carol's body had been discovered and identified, he became worried. But when Salvatore was arrested, David realized the police would likely find him, as he had communicated with Salvatore by phone and fabricated a story about taking care of Carol while she had sick. When questioned, David appeared nervous and gave conflicting accounts of his relationship with Carol. He claimed he and Carol were close, but they had not seen each other in months and she had suddenly stopped contacting him. After hours of questioning, David finally cracked under the pressure and began confessing that he had accidentally killed Carol, claiming it had happened in early January during a filming session for a client who had paid a large amount of money. The script had called for him to tie and gag Carol, put a bag over her head, and brutally beat and torture her with tools, including a hammer. David and Carol had agreed that David wouldn't hit her too hard, but she would act like she was in a lot of pain. However, David claimed he had accidentally delivered a hammer blow and fractured her skull. When he removed the bag, he saw that she was about to die, but instead of seeking medical help, he had decided to end her suffering with one last blow of the hammer. But surprisingly, the investigation revealed that the mysterious customer was actually David, who contacted Carol using a fake account. He had come up with a revenge plan because Carol had wanted to leave him. At about 9 p.m. on January 11th, David had used a hammer to kill Carol. The next day, he had bought a large freezer using Carol's credit card as well as a saw and axe from a hardware store, which he had used to dismember her body. David had attempted to disfigure her body to prevent identification by removing her tattoos and skin and attempting to burn and shred the rest. After murdering Carol, David stored her body parts in bags and kept them in a freezer for over 2 months. During this time, he deceived her relatives and friends by communicating with them through her phone and social media accounts, creating the illusion that she was still alive. By the end of March, David thought it was safe to dispose of the body and dumped it off a cliff in a remote area. He hoped that the remains would either never be found or would have decomposed beyond recognition by the time they were discovered. However, the body was found just 2 days later, and authorities tracked David down within a week. The most puzzling aspect of the case is that none of Carol's relatives or friends reported her missing, despite her disappearance occurring nearly 3 months prior. They were all convinced by the messages and social media posts David had created, and even her fiancé, who thought she was ill, didn't become alarmed when she failed to answer his calls or visit him. If someone had raised the alarm, David would have been tracked immediately through the signal from Carol's phone, which he had kept with him the entire time. At the trial, David expressed remorse and claimed he loved Carol, stating that her death was unintentional. He also said he had planned to end his own life after her death, unable to cope with the grief. Although this statement seemed implausible, the defense maintained that the incident was an unintentional act of violence. On June 12, 2023, David was found guilty of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison and ordered to pay compensation to Carol's son, Carol's mother, and the father of Carol's child, totaling €350,000. Notably, the court did not consider the manner of the killing to be cruel, and the dismemberment of the body was not deemed an aggravating factor. As a result, David may be eligible for parole in the future. Heidi Marie Erickson's journey on this earth began in Roseville, Minnesota, where she was born to her parents, John and Linda Erickson, on December 14, 1984. With 2 brothers, Peter and Joel, Heidi was the youngest of 3 children. The Erickson family moved to Falcon Heights in Minnesota when Heidi was just a little girl, and that's where she grew up. Their home fostered a loving atmosphere where deep bonds were shared, and Heidi particularly admired her 2 older brothers. Heidi had a passion for painting and frequently expressed her affection for loved ones through beautifully crafted artistic cards. Heidi also excelled academically, but her talents extended beyond the realm of studies. She actively participated in basketball and tennis at school and also engaged in choral music. In 2003, she successfully graduated from Roseville Area High School and went on to attend what is now the University of Northwestern in Roseville. Church has always been a big part of Heidi's life, having regularly attended with her family as she grew up. Those who knew Heidi said she committed her life to God. After high school, her involvement in the church grew even stronger. She became the youth group leader at the Calvary Church in Roseville and even undertook numerous mission trips. It was at the Calvary Church in Roseville where Heidi Marie Erickson crossed paths with Nicholas Firkus, who served as another youth group leader. Similar to Heidi, Nick also spent his childhood in Minnesota. His parents Steve and Julie Firkus were devout members of the Calvary Church as well. So when 18-year-old Heidi started dating 20-year-old Nick in August 2003, it was a match made in heaven. Heidi's family was all in for her happiness. Nick appeared to be an upright young man, and John and Linda were only too glad to bless the couple. In 2005, after nearly 2 years of dating, Heidi and Nick tied the knot. After marriage, they settled down in St. Paul, Minnesota. They were a genuinely happy couple who were deeply in love. Beyond their commitment within the church, the newlyweds found joy in partaking in various outdoor pursuits, such as camping, hiking, and biking. In August 2007, the couple purchased a house located at 1794 West Minnehanna Avenue in St. Paul. They moved into their new home the following month, with Nick taking charge of the financial responsibilities. Heidi, with her artistic sensibilities, poured her efforts into decorating and designing the space. It was like a fresh start, a promising new beginning for their life together. By 2010, Heidi and Nick had settled into a seemingly ordinary life. Nick held the position of Director of Operations at Crew 2 Chemdry, a carpet cleaning company, while Heidi worked at Securian, a financial services firm. Additionally, she devoted her time as a Sunday school teacher. Unbeknownst to anyone around them, their lives were in the abyss of an unforeseen tragedy that would irreversibly alter their life. On the morning of Sunday, August 25, 2010, 911 dispatch received a frantic call from Heidi Firkus that someone was trying to break into the home on Minnehaha Avenue in St. Paul. Less than a minute into the call, a piercing scream reverberated through the line, only to be followed by an abrupt silence as the connection was lost. Despite multiple efforts, the attempts to reestablish contact proved unsuccessful. However, approximately 2 minutes later, another call was received from the same phone, with Nicholas Firkus on the line, who was desperate for help. As Nick desperately conveyed the harrowing news that both he and his wife had been shot, the police were already en route to the residence. Upon entering the residence, the St. Paul police immediately observed that the front door was slightly ajar. A distinct odor of gunpowder lingered in the air, growing increasingly potent as they made their way toward the kitchen area. In the kitchen, Heidi Firkus lay motionless on her back, her feet positioned towards the entrance. Traces of blood stained her hair and face, and she remained unresponsive. Meanwhile, Nick was situated beside her, engaged in conversation with the 911 operator. He had an apparent gunshot wound to his upper left leg. Adjacent to the front door, a shotgun rested on the floor, while visible damage on the lower section of the interior door indicated the impact of shotgun pellets. Although Nick was overwhelmed by intense emotions, he was able to provide a description of the events that transpired that fateful morning. He told police that he and his wife were peacefully asleep in their upstairs bedroom on that Sunday morning. Around 6 a.m., he woke up and proceeded downstairs to quench his thirst with a glass of water. Shortly after returning to bed, while still awake, he heard sounds indicating someone attempting to open their front door. At approximately 6:30 a.m., alarmed by this, promptly awakened Heidi and told her to call 911. As she was talking to the 911 operator, he armed himself with a shotgun from the closet, and they prepared to run out the back door to the detached garage to escape. Afterward, they both made their way downstairs. At that precise moment when they reached the bottom of the stairs, the door swung open, revealing a stranger standing before them. A struggle ensued between the intruder and Nick. While Heidi ran towards the back door, tragically amidst the chaos, a gunshot was discharged, striking Heidi in the back. Nick further explained that he and the assailant wrestled over the shotgun, resulting in another gunshot being fired, this time injuring Nick in the leg. He fell to the ground and the intruder seized the opportunity to flee through the front door. However, Nick was unable to provide a detailed description of the intruder. He was unsure that they were black or white, but he did mention that the individual was wearing a hoodie. After the initial statement, Nick was taken to the hospital where he was treated for the gunshot wound. Sadly, Heidi was pronounced dead at the scene. Interestingly, despite the fatal attack that took place, no apparent signs of a home invasion were evident within the house. The front door of the house had 2 locks, a deadbolt lock and a lower lock. Tool marks were found on the door jamb near the lower lock, but none on the deadbolt. A table positioned just inside the door contained various items, including a beer bottle, a water bottle, and a receipt. But none of these items appeared to be disturbed or displaced. Moreover, nothing was stolen from the house. There was no sign in the house that indicated that a violent struggle had taken place there. The autopsy revealed the extensive severity of Heidi's injuries. She had suffered a single shotgun wound to her back, which entered from the right side and pierced her posterior vertebral column, left ribs, left lung, and anterior ribs. On a contrasting note, Nick's injury was deemed non-life-threatening. He sustained a through-and-through gunshot wound to his upper left thigh, resulting in no significant bleeding or substantial injury beyond localized damage to the soft tissues. However, emotionally, Nick was still in a deeply distressed state. Throughout the entire ordeal, he appeared hysterical. After receiving appropriate medical treatment, Nick was discharged from the hospital after approximately 3 hours. Meanwhile, the St. Paul police initiated multiple interviews in the neighborhood, inquiring whether anyone had observed or heard anything unusual or out of the ordinary during the time of the incident. One neighbor reported hearing the sound of a car screeching through the streets at approximately 6:20 a.m. The witness described the vehicle leaving the area in a hurry. Another neighbor claimed to have heard a loud noise around the same time, coinciding with the moment Nick placed the 911 call for assistance. However, oddly, this neighbor stated they did not hear any gunshots. With a multitude of unanswered questions lingering, the police were eager to have another conversation with Nick. After being discharged from the hospital, Nicholas Firkus underwent another interview, this time adding a lot more details. Despite Nick's cooperation, the detectives harbored lingering doubts regarding the honesty of his account. At one point, the detective confronted Nick directly, asking him point-blank if he had any involvement with his wife's untimely death. Nick denied having anything to do with Heidi's death. He reassured the detective, saying they had shared a happy marriage. Though Nick had acknowledged that they were having financial troubles, nobody had anticipated the secret he was about to reveal. He disclosed that he and Heidi had fallen behind on their bills, resulting in their home being foreclosed upon. In fact, the imminent eviction was scheduled for the very next day. What made the revelation even more startling was the fact that they had kept this awful situation hidden from their friends and family. Nick confessed that their plan was to pack up their belongings on Sunday and Monday morning, store some items in the garage temporarily, and seek temporary accommodation with someone they knew. Additionally, he claimed that there had been fraudulent activity in their bank account. The disclosure of this bombshell revelation left the police astounded, and their immediate focus shifted toward verifying the truthfulness of Nick's claims. As the police delved deeper into the investigation, troubling aspects began to emerge regarding the situation of the young couple. They discovered that back in 2007, Nick and Heidi purchased their home for $250,000, utilizing 2 mortgages. The primary mortgage carried a monthly payment of approximately $1,300, while the second mortgage had a monthly payment of around $250. However, the last payment made on either mortgage was on September 22, 2008, almost 2 years before the murder. Following their failure to meet mortgage obligations, received foreclosure documents on April 30, 2009. These documents were located in Nick's car during a search. The detectives further learned that on June 4, 2009, the house was sold at a sheriff's auction. On January 29, 2010, a representative from the law firm handling the foreclosure made a telephone offer to Nicholas Firkus, proposing $4,000 in cash if they vacated the premises by February 18, 2010, or $2,500 if they vacated by March 20, 2010. However, Nick did not accept either offer. Eviction proceedings were initiated on February 12, 2010, and an eviction hearing was held on March 8, 2010. Surprisingly, Nicholas Firkus attended the hearing alone, in Heidi's absence. Eventually, Nick signed an agreement to vacate the house by March 22, 2010. However, when the Firkuses failed to comply by the specified date, the law firm sent Nicholas Firkus a letter setting a lockout date of April 9, 2010. On April 6, 2010, just 3 days before the scheduled eviction date, Nick contacted the law firm, claiming that his grandmother was in hospice on her deathbed, thus requesting a few extra weeks to vacate the property. The law firm agreed and rescheduled the lockout for Monday, April 26, 2010. In reality, there was no evidence suggesting either of Nick's grandmothers were in hospice during that time. But what raised further doubts was the lack of preparation made for an eviction. Despite being aware of the impending need to vacate the property, there were no signs of any packing or preparations being made. Pictures were still on the wall. The fridge was stocked with food. Clothes were neatly folded in the dresser and no furniture was moved. There were not even any boxes or any sort of luggage anywhere in the house to suggest that they had started packing. Detectives discovered that Nick and Heidi's troubles were not limited to housing issues. The couple had been living well beyond their means and were burdened by substantial financial difficulties. They had numerous unpaid utility bills and credit card bills. At the time of Heidi's death, they owed the U.S. Bank a total of $1,736.31. Additionally, an REI credit card had an outstanding balance of $17,381.66. A review of the credit card charges from 2008 to 2009 showed that Nicholas Firkus made 2.4 times more charges on their credit cards compared to Heidi. As the investigators worked to assemble the pieces of the puzzle, a growing realization became evident. Heidi may have been kept in the dark about their dire financial situation, including the foreclosure. Heidi's family said they heard nothing about a foreclosure until the day after she was killed. They believed that Heidi did not know anything about the eviction either. According to them, Nick was solely responsible for managing the household and handling their finances. Heidi's understanding of their financial matters was limited to what Nick had communicated to her, and he intentionally concealed the information. Heidi's parents shared that the months leading up to her untimely death, Heidi had confided in them about an issue with her and Nick's bank account. While the exact nature of the problem remained unclear to her parents, Heidi expressed her frustration, mentioning that the bank had somehow mishandled their account. Though Heidi's family didn't know about a lot of things that were going on with Heidi and Nick, they were aware that the couple had been actively searching for a new home. Heidi had mentioned to her parents that they were considering the possibility of renting a temporary place. Nick was also present during this conversation, but he remained silent. In the weeks leading up to her death, she had discussed the idea of a short sale for their current home. This is usually a sign of a financially distressed homeowner who needs to sell the property before the lender seizes it in a foreclosure. However, according to her parents, the motivation behind this decision was not due to their financial strain. Heidi expressed her desire to become a mother, but did not wish to start their family in the current home due to safety concerns related to the steep staircase, and her unease about the neighborhood. In reality, by that point, they did not have any house to sell due to the foreclosure. All of these revelations strongly suggested the possibility that Heidi was unaware of the extent of the financial troubles they were facing. Heidi's family was certain that if she had been aware of any significant problems, she would have confided in them or sought their assistance. Many of the couple's friends said that despite their appearance of an extravagant lifestyle, there was an underlying sense of stress surrounding the Firkus couple. However, Heidi seemed oblivious to this stress and unaware of any financial troubles that may have been brewing, perhaps due to her naive nature. One of Heidi's friends went shopping with her on the day before her death, on Saturday, April 24, 2010. The friend told the investigators that Heidi did not appear upset or nervous about their financial situation. In fact, she was looking to buy a dress for a friend's upcoming wedding. Heidi had also made plans for Sunday, which was extremely odd given the fact that their eviction was scheduled for the same day. All of these accounts raised suspicions about Nick's credibility. In search of any solid evidence, detectives conducted a thorough examination of the text messages and emails exchanged between Heidi and Nick. However, they found no messages referencing foreclosure, eviction proceedings, or any indication that they would imminently need to vacate their house. On the contrary, a message sent by Heidi to a friend on March 11, 2010 expressed a desire for relocation if they were not tied down by their current house. The law firm handling the foreclosure and eviction had no documentation signed by Heidi, and their representatives had never been in direct contact with her. All interactions and communications were solely with Nick. Furthermore, in the emails from March and April 2010, Heidi repeatedly requested Nick to handle and respond to these calls, indicating that she was receiving them. In response, Nick reassured her that he was taking care of it and mentioned being in contact with U.S. Bank regarding an audit involving fraud with their account. He also assured Heidi that their credit scores were good. In reality, the bank never conducted any such audit, nor was there any fraud related to the Firkus' account. Even with this seemingly incriminating evidence, what made the case all the more perplexing was the absence of a clear motive. Detectives thoroughly investigated Nick's financial accounts in search of any possible leads, but they found no evidence of him benefiting from Heidi's death, whether monetarily or otherwise. Taking another approach to this puzzling case, detectives reconstructed the invasion to observe whether it was possible to hear the jingling sound at the front door from the upstairs bedroom. Unfortunately, the test did not yield any significant findings. The lack of development was disappointing, but authorities continued their efforts to uncover the truth. Throughout the investigation, the police maintained contact with Nick, and he was cooperative for the most part. He willingly provided his DNA samples and answered their questions. However, a few weeks later, Nick decided to hire a lawyer, Joe Friedberg, who advised him to cease communication with the police. Friedberg alleged that Nick had been mistreated by the police, emphasizing that Nick was a victim and a grieving widower rather than a suspect. As a result, when the police approached Nick with more probing inquiries, he declined to respond to any of them, following the advice of his attorney. To the astonishment of everyone involved, the investigation took a significant turn when Nick's lawyer, Joe Friedberg, reached out to the police. He presented them with a sketch of the alleged intruder, which had been crafted with the assistance of a private artist. Detectives found it peculiar that Nick and his lawyer had sought the assistance of a random artist, instead of utilizing the professional services of the police sketch artist. The police became even more skeptical when they compared Nick's initial claim of not getting a good look at the intruder with the level of detail present in the release sketch. The illustration depicted a middle-aged man with a dark complexion, big eyes, and wearing a hoodie. Despite their suspicion, the authorities decided to give Nick the benefit of the doubt. In an effort to potentially identify the alleged intruder, the police released the sketch to the media and soon they found a lead. The sketch looked familiar to St. Paul police. Approximately 4 months earlier, the police had been involved in a high-profile case involving a series of break-ins during the morning hours where the homeowners were present during the incidents. These crimes had garnered significant media attention at the time. The police realized that they might be dealing with the same individual and focused their efforts on linking the two cases together. The intruder was a man named Michael Lee Pye, but there was just one problem. Michael Pye couldn't have been involved in Heidi's murder because he was already in prison when she was killed. He was arrested on January 1, 2010 for the series of burglaries. The St. Paul police still interviewed Pye and subsequently ruled him out as a suspect. Detectives theorized that Nick Firkus may have seen Pye's face in the media coverage and concocted a story implicating him as the intruder. But theories alone couldn't prove Nick's guilt, so the investigators waited for something more substantial: the forensic reports. The forensic report yielded some intriguing findings. The ballistic analysis of the bullets revealed that both shots were fired from Nick's shotgun, confirming his statement regarding the weapon used in the incident. However, the bullet trajectory of Heidi's gunshot wound did not align with the account provided by Nick. But the biggest finding was the absence of unidentified DNA on both the murder weapon and the crime scene. The only DNA they could find either belonged to Heidi or Nick. This led them to consider the possibility that there might not have been an intruder involved, but rather the crime was perpetrated from within. But what could Nick Firkus possibly gain from his wife's murder? Detectives couldn't help but wonder if Nick had deceived Heidi for an extended period, painting a false picture of a stable and prosperous life. May have discovered the truth about their financial turmoil, or she was very close to doing so. Perhaps driven by fear or desperation, he had resorted to drastic measures to maintain the illusion he had created for Heidi. However, these were all speculations, and authorities still lacked enough conclusive evidence to tie Nick Firkus to the crime. As the days turned into months, Heidi's family had to move on with their life. However, they continued to advocate for justice. Unfortunately, the investigation seemed to have reached a standstill, leaving many frustrated and disheartened. Some staunchly believed in Nick's innocence, firmly convinced that an intruder was responsible for Heidi's tragic death. On the other hand, some believed that Nick had a hand in Heidi's murder. Over the years, the St. Paul police made repeated attempts to contact Nick, seeking his cooperation and assistance in the investigation. However, Nick showed no interest in engaging with the authorities and even requested them to stop reaching out to him. His lawyer, Friedberg, consistently asserted that the police had exaggerated the financial troubles faced by the Firkus couple. According to him, their law firm had thoroughly examined the accounts and concluded that the situation was not as dire as portrayed by the police. Media personnel also tried to reach out to Nick for interviews or statements, but their attempts were met with little success as well. As time went on without any significant breakthroughs, the case gradually turned cold. Though authorities never ruled Nick out as a possible suspect, he was also never officially declared as a suspect. Meanwhile, Nick had moved on with his life too. Just 3 months after Heidi's death, Nick met another woman, Rachel Watson, and used his recent tragedy as a means to win her affection. Coincidentally, Rachel got to know Nick on a personal level through her sister, Sarah, who had shared a close friendship with Heidi. Believing that Nick was the man of her dreams, Rachel started a romantic relationship with him. Sarah too held the belief that she was the one for Nick, considering him a remarkable man who had loved and faithfully cared for his wife. In August 2012, after almost a year of dating, Rachel and Nick exchanged vows. The couple went on to have a happy marriage, and they eventually became the proud parents of 3 wonderful children. They soon moved into a house that was purchased by Nick Firkus' parents. This arrangement was made due to Nick's poor credit score at the bank. Nick and Rachel agreed to make monthly mortgage payments to Nick's parents, while Nick took on the responsibility of paying the property taxes directly to the county. Everything was going well until Rachel stumbled upon a notice indicating that they were at risk of losing their home to foreclosure due to unpaid property taxes. Rachel's mind immediately drew a connection to Heidi's death. She couldn't help but recall the last time Nick faced similar situation. It resulted in an unfortunate event. After this incident, Nick, Rachel's husband and the father of her children, became someone she no longer recognized. Ultimately, one day she decided to confront him and record the conversation. Although Nick didn't confess to anything, Rachel was genuinely scared to stay with him. The constant worry consumed Rachel to the point where she could no longer bear it. Finally, in 2019, the couple got a divorce. In that same year, Sergeant Nicole Sipes of the St. Paul Police Department decided to re-examine the case of Heidi Firkus' death. Sipes contacted the FBI to help reconstruct the 911 call audio data to determine. Sipes contacted the FBI to help reconstruct the 911 call audio data to determine if there was evidence of a third person in the home. The analysis of the 911 call highlighted a few concerns. In Heidi's 911 call, there was no indication of a struggle or any mention of an intruder who had gained entry into the house. Her call did not provide any evidence to support Nick's claim of a home invasion. Yet during Nick's 911 call, which came in just a minute later, The sounds of police arriving at the scene can be heard in the background. This raised doubts about the timeline and the accuracy of Nick's account. The FBI also compared the ballistics test results with the virtual model of Heidi and Nick Firkus' home to further investigate the nature of the shots fired. The analysis suggested the likelihood that the gunshots fired during the incident were intentional rather than accidental. Upon learning about Nick Firkus' recent divorce from his second wife, Sergeant Nicole Sipes contacted Rachel Firkus. Rachel shared her suspicions with Sipes, providing additional insight into the case. Sipes believed Rachel Firkus could have also been a victim in the same manner as Heidi if she had gotten out in time. Just 3 years later, the case experienced an unexpected breakthrough. Combining the new evidence with the previous findings, the St. Paul police had accumulated enough substantial evidence to charge Nick Firkus with the murder of his former wife. After years of investigation in May 2021, almost a decade after Heidi's tragic killing, Nick Firkus was arrested at his residence in Mounds View, Minnesota, and was booked in the Ramsey County Jail. Nicholas Firkus' trial began in January 2023 in Ramsey County District Court. For prosecutors Elizabeth Lamon and Rachel Craker, it was the most high-profile case of their careers. Along with presenting the other evidence, the prosecutors presented a possible timeline of events on the day of the murder to the jurors. Their theory was that on August 25, 2010, around 6:30 a.m., Nick had awakened Heidi, claiming to have heard an intruder. Heidi, still sleepy and frightened, followed him downstairs. He made her call 911 to make this story more credible. It was at that moment when Heidi turned her back that Nick shot her. Afterward, he shot himself in the leg and made up the intruder story to the authorities. During the trial, Prosecutor Lamon argued Nick was desperate and ashamed and had run out of time and reality was going to come crashing down on him. However, defense attorney Richmond disagreed with the prosecutor's theory of a motive. He questioned the notion, asking whether a loving husband would kill the person who everyone agreed was the love of his life to spare himself from momentary embarrassment about a foreclosure. He would have survived the embarrassment far more easily than the death of his wife, Richmond added. Richmond also pointed out that there was no financial gain for Nicholas to kill Heidi. However, it wasn't enough to convince the jury. The jurors believed in Nick's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. On February 10, 2023, after 4 hours of deliberations, the jury found Nick Firkus guilty of murder on April 13, 2023, almost 13 years after Heidi's death. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During the victim impact statement after the conviction, Heidi's brother, Peter Erickson, conveyed that their family struggled to find closure and come to terms with the tragic loss of Heidi due to the lies that were told and the pressures to believe them. The realization quickly set in that everything Nick was telling us betrayed who I knew my sister to be, Peter added. For his part, Nick Firkus maintained his innocence and denied committing the murder. He also declared, "My body is condemned to serve for another man's crime, but my soul is free." The conviction brought a sense of solace to Heidi's parents, John and Linda Erickson. They expressed their gratitude to all the people who had worked tirelessly for justice throughout the years. Heidi Firkus's gravestone bears the inscription, "Joyful Child of God," a description that beautifully captures the essence of Heidi's spirit. Instead of grief overshadowing our every memory, we believe it will now take its proper place alongside all the goodness, joy, and beauty God brought into our lives through the gift of Heidi, shared Heidi's parents. It is truly heartbreaking to see how far some people are willing to go just to maintain a facade. But is there any chance that Nick Firkus might have been telling the truth about the intruder? Or was it just a desperate attempt to save face? Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.